Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about Leigh's journey from working in outer beauty to inner beauty, how an unexpected pregnancy shaped Leigh's life, and the 8 keys to self-love. But before we dive into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
I had a work trip this week that was amazing.
Yeah, headed up to Byron?
Yeah, I did. I got to spend a couple of days in Byron Bay with a new client. Outside of the Fuel Co Date Forever world, I do some business coaching and consulting. So it was a really great trip. And what a cool place to, get to go for a work trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those kind of experiences where I knew that I'd made a really big impact. I got some really validating feedback about my contribution, which was great. Just a really, really good career and kind of business win. But off the back of that, I also had a really great weekend.
Yeah, me too. That was going to be my fuel up.
Yeah. Well, maybe you go first and then I'll add in some sprinkles.
Yeah. So I just had a really great weekend catching up with friends and doing lots of fun things. So the footy game that I was meant to be playing in got cancelled, but we ended up getting a bit of a crew together and going to a different footy match. So got to watch my team play, and unfortunately we lost, but I had lots of fun at the footy there with a good group of people. And then that evening as well, went out for dinner and caught up with some other friends and went out dancing and just had a real lot of fun.
Yeah, it's one of those funny things because we live in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, but we're not from here. So the football team that we support in the AFL is not our local team. No. So we only really get the opportunity to go to like 1, maybe 2 games a year.
Where they're in the state, yeah.
Yeah, when our Adelaide team is visiting Sydney. So it was really cool to be able to go, and we had some friends, and not the best game, but it was good fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great fun. Yeah.
So for me, this last week was about working hard, but also playing hard.
Yeah, real good. But now let's jump into this week's ep.
Today we're welcoming Leigh Huxley. Leigh started her career in the beauty industry and was the owner of a skincare business where she was passionate about helping women embrace and enhance their outer beauty. She's now come full circle and is passionate about inspiring women to embrace and enhance their inner beauty so that they can become the best version of themselves. Her approach is all about self-love and inspiring women to become the best version of themselves through unconditional love and acceptance. Welcome to the show, Leigh.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's great to have you here.
What a flip, inside and outside.
Yeah, well, as within, so without.
Hey, so what I would love to know is what happened at that crossroads. So you're working in skincare and the external beauty. What was the moment in time where you flipped and went, maybe this is an inside game?
A couple of decades span. A lot happened in between. If we look at decades, I had the business when I was in my 20s. I inadvertently became a business owner. I got married at the age of 19. So I met my first husband at the age of 15, got married at 19. This was in South Africa. We moved from where we got married to Durban in Natal, what's KwaZulu-Natal now. And I was working for somebody, and then the business came up for sale, and he said, we need to buy this business. And I was like, oh, okay. Had no experience, understanding, but I knew I had the passion for the occupation that I'd gone into. So, and yeah, long journey, nearly burnt myself out because I was a perfectionist, expected myself to do everything in the business and work all the hours my staff did. So yeah, that was a learning curve. And then I struggled to have a family. I thought I'd have it all buttoned up by the age of 28. I'd keep my business, have a boy and a girl, and that was that. Well, that didn't work. My hormonal system was all over the show because of stress, self-induced stress. And so that wasn't going to happen. And then I bumped into fertility problems. I thought it was just me, but it turned out it was actually more my then husband than me. It was both, particularly on his side, which was okay. And then at the age of 32, I fell pregnant, but not through my relationship with my husband, through a relationship with a friend who was a dear friend. And it was never a physical relationship. It was a 3-year relationship, a close friendship. And in the last, I don't know, however, maybe 6 months, turned physical and really didn't think I'd be able to have children. And then, oh goodness, so I'm pregnant. So now what? So yeah, interesting segue.
What did you do,
so,
Leigh? Take us right back.
Word.
What did you do?
Oh, shit.
Did you fess up?
Yeah, I knew I had to. There was a lot of contradiction going on within me and conflict. So looking back and during that stage, I really, really disliked that I had betrayed my husband and that I'd hurt him. I really struggled with that. But at the same time, I didn't regret having that relationship with this dear friend because he taught me something about love that had been absent in my relationship. I didn't go out looking for the relationship. It sounds strange, but it evolved. It happened. And he wasn't married. He wasn't committed to anybody. So there was nobody on that side, but yeah, my side. And the fact that he was my husband's best friend. So there was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of betrayal. The first people I told were my parents. And I'm a very late child. So my parents were elderly. My mom had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So my dad was a retired minister. I'd grown up as a minister's daughter. So there was all the religiosity of the shame and the guilt and the blame and all that going on. Didn't know what they would say. And
meanwhile, mixed in all of your desire to have children.
Yeah. So my mother's response was interesting. She was like, well, in the wild, the female chooses the male for his virility and his strength. And subconsciously, you must have known that this was going on and this desire to have a child, deep down, you chose differently. So I was like, oh, that was the interesting response. Didn't expect that. My father, I think, I was expecting hellfire, brimstone, banished. And to complicate things, we were all very involved in the church at that time as well. So there was that lots of layers. So my father just said, you have to tell my then husband. So he encouraged me, but he insisted. And that was really hard. And then it was decisions. So I'd flown out of Durban to go and visit my parents, spent a few days there, and then came back. And I had told my husband on the phone, and then I had to face the reality of it all. Meantime, my business had been in the last, I can't remember how, it had moved venues a few times because we'd outgrown the business area. So, but at that stage, the business was a whole home, except for our bedroom. So by day, it was a business. By night, it was a home. So because of all the turmoil, we closed the business. So that must have raised eyebrows. But you can't factor other people into it. It's really dealing with the crisis at the time. So we decided to stay together, but the issues were never resolved. Our lives in the early years, we were very emotionally intimate. And then when we got married, he got absorbed into the corporate world and he went one way and I got absorbed into my business. And then we would come together with church activities. So that intimacy was fraying. And that's when I found the intimacy that this is all in retrospect, of course, the intimacy that I was really yearning for, that emotional intimacy and tenderness and warmth. I found that in our friend. So yeah, to this day, it sounds paradoxical that I don't regret it because I learnt a lot and I have the gift of my son, which I wasn't going to have. So, and he accepted fatherhood because he knew the chances of him fathering a child naturally was not there. So yeah, we have in between stages. I had undergone a quite strenuous infertility treatment. The whole procedure, that was a whole journey in itself, and it didn't work.
So, Leigh, how did you go about telling the father of the child?
Well, he was the first one, obviously, that knew. I should say my parents were the first one. My parents were the first to know outside of our relationship. No, he knew. I told him, and it it was just stunned silence. And yeah, it's like, so yeah. But then we parted ways, and he moved away, and it was really hard to say goodbye to that relationship. But there was a part of me, I was very torn. A client at the time who was a psychologist, I was sharing everything with her, and she walked me through that journey, and she was like, well, you've got 3 choices. And I was like, what's the third choice? She said, well, either you stay with your husband or you go with your beloved, or you go with neither of them and you raise a child on your own. And I was like, I can't do that. So much fear came up inside of me. So as a result, the decision was made that I would stay with my husband and that I would part ways with our friend, because it was a loss to both of us. And yeah, and it was really tough. It was really hard. But that's the choice you make.
Yeah.
Well, I made.
Yeah.
So how did you go from there? Like, what was the state of your relationship after you effectively dropped that bombshell?
I think back, it was a long time ago. My son's 23 now, so it's a long time ago. I think it renewed our intimacy, our emotional intimacy. In that time of me being pregnant, I had a lovely pregnancy. I was very afraid of losing him because there was this religiosity going on that I'm going to be punished, and that my punishment was going to be me losing my child. So I had that going on in the background. But besides that, I loved my pregnancy. I embraced it. He embraced it. He embraced the birth of my son. I embraced motherhood. He embraced fatherhood as best he could, but it must have been hard knowing that it wasn't his
Biological child, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we moved forward. And then at the age of, my son had just turned a year, and we got he got an opportunity. So in the meantime, I had sold my main business when I was pregnant. We moved the business out of the house when I was 6 months pregnant, and then I sold the business to one of my staff, and we moved home at the same time, and I still did a few clients. And so when my son was a year, this opportunity came for a corporate move to the UK, from South Africa to the UK, which he really desired to do. And I was like, okay, let's do it. The business is sold, And there was a big part of me that was a relief, it felt like a new beginning where nobody knew my background and my history. But then, yeah, the initial problems weren't resolved. And so, yeah, I mean, there was no friction in the marriage, but he worked a lot away from home. Yeah.
So, Leigh, you've referred to him as your husband then, so I'm assuming you're no longer together.
No, we parted ways in about 2008, I think. I've lost track of timelines, but yeah. So I think the divorce came through 2009. Yeah, and then I remarried in 2012. And then had a whole experience of blended families and interesting.
A whole nother dynamic.
Yeah, where my son and my current husband just, didn't see eye to eye. Very difficult as a mom. So basically all my life, I've been in relationship drama triangles. I now know that I can see the part I played in them, which at the time I kept on thinking, why is this happening again? I didn't realize that it was all this inner conflict going on inside of me.
So was it through that journey, I guess, of these relationships and these relationship triangles, as you've described it, was it through that journey that you've then discovered this, I guess, inner work and done that pivot from, I guess, the outer beauty to the inner beauty?
Yeah, there were a lot of, as I said, things happened in decades. So 20s was my business, 30s was becoming a mom, motherhood, 40s was navigating blended families, and within that period, in the middle, my son had his first psychotic episode. So I got thrown into, or catapulted into, the mental health world, which I knew nothing about. It was a huge shock. So all this was going on, but yeah, I had to navigate through that. And then we got through that. It took about a 3-year rehabilitation process. And then 2019, end of 2019, it was definitely like in the tarot, the tower crumbling, everything, the lightning struck. My now husband, lost his job. We had been on holiday. We came back. He's an airline engineer. And with Thomas Cook, we came back. And the day we came back, the next day he went into work to find that the company had totally folded. There was no remuneration. There was nothing. So he went into a lot of inner turmoil. So I was supporting him. Both his parents had been diagnosed with health issues. And my son had a second psychotic episode when he was at university. That all happened in the space of a month.
Wow.
Leigh, how are you here with us?
Somewhere along the line in that time, and I cannot remember, I decided I wanted to do coaching, and I didn't want to do it the masculine way, and I found spiritual coaching. And I reconnected with my spiritual self, which was there early in my life, but then I excommunicated myself with all my aspects of betrayal. And I then had to reconnect with that side when I turned 50 and started doing the inner work over that period. So I'm now 55. So it's all a bit of a blur. I don't quite know how it happened. I don't even quite know how I managed to do it. And then lockdown came, so it was all online. I had to do my qualification online, and which worked out fine. And I got my qualification in 2020. So yeah, so that's how that transition from the outer beauty to the inner beauty happened.
What a journey, Leigh.
It's a bit of a zigzag, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, even the way that you've described it as these really quite traumatic experiences, both for yourself and with the people that you love. And it's very evident to me that you've done some inner work and healing, because there's almost a neutrality about the way that you're speaking, because you've healed some of the wounds that have come from those traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the work that you do now in identity and transformational coaching.
Well, at the moment, I'm busy exploring, now that we, the world has opened up, so to speak, i.e. in person. I'm playing around with developing workshops for women and looking at different aspects of things that I've learned, speaking from my experience, sharing from my heart. So I've done the coaching bit. I did some coaching with the modalities that we did. Well, I learned in the course, and I loved them, but I found them the route I chose, which was coaching through the chakras and looking at all the areas and the issues and just hearing people's stories and the limiting beliefs and conditioning that gets flagged up as they share their stories and the threads that run through. And so highlighting that for them and helping them bring resolution to their own journey really through life. But it was very heavy in preparation, and I thought, I can't, because I was thorough with it, I thought I can't sustain this. So I've kind of like put the one-to-one aside. Obviously, if people call and want support and mentoring, I'm more than happy to do it. But I'm exploring doing workshops with women, looking at different areas, as I say, mainly from my life experiences. And so I'm at the stage of that. So it's still very much in the exploratory phase. Last year I was a whole year of working through my dislike of being visible, my visibility.
And here you are on a podcast thing.
Well, that's how I happened on doing podcasts at the end of last year, because I thought, I forced myself to have some social media presence. And I thought, well, this is just not natural to me, but I do love conversations and connections. And then it was almost podcasts found me. I didn't find them. And so I've been playing with that at the end of last year. And I really, really enjoy connecting that way and sharing my story and having the courage to do it. But I'm okay with it because, as I said to Nathan, I share from my scars, not my wounds. I've worked through my wounds. And that's where the self-love comes in. You can't share when you're still struggling.
So from that journey of learning to love yourself, we know that you've developed this idea of the 8 keys to self-love. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I can. So it's based on is it the term acronym? When you take self-love, so the self is the first 4 keys and the love is the second 4 keys or aspects. So this kind of just popped in and I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. This was a good while ago and I've shared it a few times. Before we go into it, I just want to say that the greatest love story of all that we'll ever have is the one with ourselves. And the relationship that we have with ourselves gets reflected in our relationships with others. And our relationships with others are mirrors to us of what needs to be worked on in ourselves. So, but I didn't know that at the time. I understand that more now. So
I appreciate that you've arrived at that around the age of 50, and here you are sharing it with us so we can take a shortcut.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I've really, because it's as within, so without. So everything in our life, and particularly relationships, is all a reflection of what's going on. So when I was going through all those years of turmoil and drama triangles and love triangles, I was in such conflict within myself that was I drawing that to myself? Possibly. But what I'm saying is it's the inner, the outer, the inner. So it's just it's an inquiry for inner work. So the S stands for self-care. That's the most obvious thing, as the physical self-care, looking after ourselves physically. The others we tend to ignore more is the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. So those all need to be in balance for us to be the best version of ourselves. We need to pay equal attention to all those areas. I'll run through them all, and if you want to go back on stuff, then yeah. The E is for energy leaks, and I didn't realize how much energy I leaked through people pleasing. I was a people pleaser. I was an overgiver. I didn't think I was involved in codependent relationships, but I was, because I think there's a scale of codependency. I was on the lower end, but I was involved in a codependent relationship. And the other energy leaks: worry, fear. The overgiving and people-pleasing was part of my conditioning growing up as a minister's daughter, watching my mom do that. I thought that was normal. She always put my dad up on a pedestal. And I did that in my first marriage, for sure. I was willing to sacrifice my desires for what he desired. So there was an imbalance. That's all I'm saying. So when I understood that, I thought, yeah, I could see that happening. And the codependency part is in any relationship, it doesn't have to just be in marriage, is like you only feel happy when they're happy, to simplify it. And that's where I recognized it. And so anyway, we won't go into all that. And then language: how do you speak about yourself? How do you speak to yourself? Because our words are wands, and we create our reality with the words we speak. The words we speak come from the thoughts we think and the feelings we have. And we are over 70% water, and water holds memory. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Japanese scientist, Masaru Emoto, who did experiments on water using words spoken in water.
I did. And then he froze the water and it came out in all different shapes. Some were sharp and spiky and some were soft and smooth, depending on the energy that they were holding. Yeah, incredibly interesting approach. And you don't need to understand the science behind it, right? But if we treat ourselves with kindness and we can hold on to that kindness, it's going to have a different result than if we speak with hatred or hurt or criticism to ourselves. Yeah, such an incredible experiment.
Yeah, so that is when I learned that, I started becoming very mindful of, because we're more mindful of how we speak to others and the impact our words have on others, both good and not. But we don't realize we're doing that to ourselves. So it was note to self. Be careful, be mindful. Yeah. Choose the words that you speak to yourself, to others, and about yourself. F is forgiveness, and it's a challenge enough to forgive others, but it's even more of a challenge to forgive yourself for past mistakes. And there's no degree on mistakes in my mind. It's the meaning we make of mistakes and how we've messed up that we get entangled in. Yeah. So it's the meaning we give things that cause our suffering. So yeah, that's a whole huge area and a vital area. And forgiveness of others is not about the other person. It's not about setting them free. It's about setting yourself free. Because if you hold that unforgiveness, all that energy, that mental energy, that emotional energy that gets trapped up in this repeating, rinse and repeat, stuck in the spin cycle, all that energy, once you forgive that person, you're releasing that energy for yourself, that creative energy to move forward in your own life. So forgiveness is about setting yourself free. And even more important is forgiving yourself.
Yeah. One of the best ways that I've ever heard forgiveness described was the idea that you no longer desire or need anything from that person.
Yeah.
To feel complete, to feel closure, and you can truly let it go. And that obviously applies to your relationship with yourself too, that you don't require anything or you don't have left unmet desires from the past version of yourself who did the best that they could with the information and resources that they had at the time.
Exactly. And that's really, if we knew better, we would do better at the time. So another favorite quote of mine on unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison yourself and expecting the other person to die.
And there's a reason poison comes with a warning.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's such an important area. And then the love part, L is letting go, and letting go of the inner critic, limiting beliefs, the control of yourself, the control of others, letting go of the 4 C's, which is comparing, competing, complaining, criticizing. All those are unhelpful. And if you're doing that to yourself, you're doing it to others. If you're doing it to others, you're doing it to yourself. So if in relationships you're feeling constantly criticized, then it's an awareness is possibly where am I criticizing myself?
Yeah, I guess that's where that mirror comes into it as well with all your relationships. That
it is.
Yeah, if you're critical of yourself, you're probably critical of other people too, or vice versa. If you're critical of other people, you're probably...
Yeah, and if you're constantly complaining, there's another quote, and it's a lot to wrap your head around, and it's one to contemplate on, is we teach others how to treat us. So if we're treating ourselves poorly with our thoughts and our beliefs and all that, we're giving others permission to do the same to us. So again, it's that, where's this coming from? It takes a lot of awareness. Once you're aware of these things, you can't become unaware, but it comes at the right time. It's not a snap of the finger. You can get ahas and breakthroughs, but for me, it was a journey. And then the O of love is being open to new opportunities, being open to new possibilities. V is important. It stands for vibration. To keep your vibration high, do what lights you up. Because if you're happy, others are happy. Because it's infectious. Your vibration is infectious. So do what lights you up. Do what brings you joy. And I think in relationships, that's so important, because I think often a good analogy for relationships is the DNA, how it goes apart and then it comes together and it goes apart. So it's allowing the space to be the individual and do what lights you up. But then there's the coming together, the connection, and then it grows. So yeah, for me, that ties into that. And then E is embrace your uniqueness. We all unique beings. There is no one like us. Nobody has our fingerprints. Nobody will ever have our fingerprints. And that's where this the importance of letting this comparison thing go, which is so indoctrinated into us conditionally with our society and culture and family systems and religiosity and everything. We like to box things up, but we're unique. We're a one-time cosmic event, I heard somebody describe us once as, and it's true. Embrace it. Embrace it.
I really love that model because on the Date Forever podcast, we talk about not only like dating your person, but also dating yourself. And I think quite often dating yourself might seem like, kind of that it's going to get a massage and like, do the things that just light you up. But so much of dating yourself is also kind of diving into some of those things that are a little bit uncomfortable and those things that you need to let go of, or like it's not all sunshine and rainbows and happy things. It is about trying to forgive yourself and diving into some of that inner work and really unpack some of the issues that may have been holding you back. Yeah.
And the reason for doing all of that is to set yourself free. To lighten up, we have to let go. If you think of a hot air balloon rising, there's this beautiful potential, but it's got all these sandbags. It can't go anywhere if it's tethered to the ground or it's got all these sandbags. So all this inner work is letting the sandbags go, and just so you can gain a higher perspective and see the gifts that have come out of the shadows, because they're always there.
I love that. That's such a beautiful visual. So, Leigh, I would love to know, like, what are some of the practices and things that you do to take care of that relationship with yourself now? What are the things you do to keep your relationship with you fueled up?
I have a meditation practice. So that's my spiritual connection in the morning, if you want. I'm forever listening to fascinating podcasts and spiritual platforms and spiritual teachers. I've got a wide range of interests, and that's my soul fuel. And that keeps my vibration high and my perspectives open. And so that's an important, I do overwhelm myself because I oversubscribe to things, but that's...
Nate's laughing because that's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
My husband thinks I'm absolutely crazy. He was like, but that's just me. In the human design, I'm a 3-5. The 3 is the experimenter, the explorer. It's like constantly... In the past, it has been in the form of seeking, what it's shifted a bit. It's just, I just find it fascinating. And then after all that, go to gym in the morning. And I've, in the last year or so since lockdown, incorporated more yoga in my gym, my physical activity. And then just being really aware of emotions. Another interesting thing I learned is that emotions are energy in motion. So if you bump up against a difficult emotion, or if you're triggered about something, first of all, the trigger is normally an inner child trigger. It normally is around something in your childhood, and it's triggered that. So that's to investigate and explore. But if you just allow 90 seconds, that emotion, without resisting it, without trying to figure it out in your mind, without doing anything, just observing the emotion, it'll pass through you and won't get stuck. The problem is, well, certainly for me, when uncomfortable emotions came up, they're like sitting on a beach, in a pool, you're sitting on a beach ball, and you're squashing them down, and then all of a sudden they pop up, and they pop up even higher. And that's an analogy for difficult emotions when we're squashing them down. If you just let that beach ball float on the surface, it'll float away. So being emotionally aware of my emotions that come up, and being very mindful of my language and my thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned in there very briefly that one of the things that you've explored for yourself and getting to know yourself was your human design profile. So Nathan and I have done like tip of the iceberg of this.
I'm also tip of the iceberg, not far from.
Yeah, so
carry on.
Sorry. No, so I think I am an emotional projector with an element of manifesting, and Nath is an emotional manifesting generator. So I don't really fully know what that means. I haven't quite got my head around it. But what I love about this is that there are so many tools and frameworks available to help you guide you on this experience of getting to know yourself. You don't have to just sit there in a dark room and just go, I wonder what I should learn about myself today. Like, go out and explore these ideas and profiling tools and podcasts and people who have discovered things before you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Human design is a good one. It's very complex, and the profile is quite the key. So you've got the type that you're talking about. So I'm a generator, and my authority is sacral authority, whereas I don't know much about the projector. A generator's got to wait to respond. A projector, I know, needs to wait for the invitation, and an emotional solar plexus it's a waveform. You shouldn't make your decisions up there. You shouldn't make your decisions down there. You should make your decision in the middle point.
But even that is interesting to acknowledge that we're all different. There are people who want to
absolutely
move at the top of the wave, middle of the wave, bottom of the wave on most things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very different. So the other really useful tool, and it is the gene keys, that was downloaded to an amazing man, Richard Rudd, and he's written books and books and books and books. And he was a student and involved in human design, and then all this download. So that again is it's a blueprint of your birth, but in the gene keys, there are 11 spheres, and each one, so it's life's work, soul's work, and then your relationships. It's a whole system, very fascinating. But in each sphere, there's the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi. So it gives you a good understanding. Your shadow is all your subconscious conditioning, and then the gift is what you're here to share, and the siddhi is the divine blessing that's just comes when we least expect it, and goes and comes and goes. So yeah, it's a more contemplative, in a way easier to understand. It's very complex, but it's not as overwhelming as the human design. But it's also fascinating. And yeah, I've shared that with so many people, and then when they pulled it up, they were like, oh, that makes so much sense. And when I came to understand things of myself, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's often a light bulb going on. Oh, I do that. Yeah, I do think that. Yeah, I do feel that, or I do that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like you said, those things, once you've shone a light on it or turned on some awareness, it's very hard to unsee and unlearn those things. But we've all got blind spots. We've all got things that we don't know about ourselves that we haven't yet uncovered. And I think that's part of the journey, and this idea of dating forever and dating yourself forever is that you get to uncover these things now and well into the future, because I'm sure the version of Leigh Huxley at 50-something is very, very different than you were even 5 years ago.
Well, I think we're evolving and changing every day. So the version of yourself today is slightly different. It's all these every now and then we get these big trajectory changes, but like a big ship or an airplane, if the degree is changed by like 1 degree each day or over a period of time, where you were destined to be, it's changed and you end up on a different. So definitely, if I look on my life, the shift in the trajectory by these awarenesses that had come in, I'm now I'm heading towards a different destination. And there's no right and there's no wrong. I think I was really, I think we get very caught up in what's the right decision and just relax in that there is no right and wrong. It's a decision you make, and each decision will unfold a different aspect of yourself. Simple as. There's no right and wrong.
That's a beautiful message to leave us on, because after 100 and something interviews with couples and experts, one of the constants has been that there is no one way. I mean, they're definitely core principles and ideas, but the way that they look for Nath and I are totally different to what they look like for most other couples, and everyone needs to create their own journey and their own relationship with themselves and their person. So I think that's there's no right, there's no wrong. Just design it for what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Become the best version of yourself. Do the best you know each day, and become the best version of you.
Leigh, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your incredible story. I think someone should make a movie of your life, or at least you should write a book about it. But to say thank you for joining us, we've given access to a school uniform to a student in Cambodia. So this is kind of special because it unlocks education. So education is free in Cambodia, but the family needs to provide the uniform, which some families aren't able to do. So with this uniform comes education. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today, and thank you for making that possible.
Yeah, and thank you for your work in the world. You're both sharing your light.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So Leigh, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, how can they do that?
I am on social media. I just create twice a week. I just do an inspirational quote. One of them is all around self-love. But on my website, I do have a free gift around self-love. It was created by a friend of mine who her passion is creating self-hypnosis tracks for people to work through things in their life. And she created one for me around self-love. And so that's the free gift. So my website is my name, Leigh, Huxley, Huxley, all one word, .com. And just sign up for it and you'll get the free gift. And then, take it from there. And I think I posted my social media links in your...
Yeah, we'll pop all of that in the show notes.
And if people want to, if anything resonates or people are in similar challenging situations, please feel free to direct message me and we can connect up and
Sounds perfect.
Thank you so much, Leigh.
Thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.